ready? Are you ready?
Greetings, welcome to episode 72, can't believe that, episode 72 of Combe TV, and it's time to preview the classic. Now, that means you're not relying on purely me. We've got the font of knowledge joining us tonight for the Autumn Classic. Let's bring him in. Mr. Pye, Marcus Pye, good evening, sir. Welcome to the preview for probably your favourite event of the year at Castle Combe.
Absolutely, yeah. Good evening, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, great to be here.
Isn't
really
it just
meeting? Yeah,
but it's like in a blink of an eye, isn't it? Though it doesn't seem like 5 minutes ago we were doing the Autumn Classic last time. That's
right. And the amazing thing is, of course, this will be the 12th edition of the event. And it dates back to a joint event with the finals back in 2012. And it's run as a standalone subsequently. And this year, I really feel it's grown in stature. And we've got a better, broader, balanced entry across the grids, 6 grids, 8 races. And I think it's going to be an absolute cracker.
And it's growing off track as well, I feel, and I think that this year is almost like in a amuse-bouche, excuse my French, and next year they're planning to go even bigger, aren't they? They're really trying to grab it by the horns.
Yeah, that's right. It's gone through the gestation period. It's building, and there's been a few things that haven't worked and a lot that has, and that's kind of part of the way that events grow over the years. It's difficult sometimes at to place an event like this at any particular point in the year, because it's always in a clash with something. There are so many events, particularly for historic cars these days, all around Europe. A couple of years ago, clashed with the Spa 6 Hours,
Right.
This year it doesn't, and while arguably it doesn't take too many of the competitors away from Castle Combe, what it does do, it spreads the preparers of the vehicles rather thinly, and therefore they go where the majority of their competitors are, their clients are,
Exactly.
it's hit the classic a little bit in previous years.
It has, and fingers crossed that would be okay. Now, before we go into that, I'm just going to quickly catch up with you all, viewers. Thank you for chiming in with your comments. Keep them coming in. Make sure you're sharing the show, liking the show, loving the show, laughing at the show, whatever it is, and share it as much as possible. Sue Woodland will hopefully be dropping in later. That's brilliant to see. Tim Perry, one of our mighty Orange Army. Evening all, dilly dilly, classic time. Dilly dilly, mate, indeed. I've even corrupted you, Marcus, on that front, haven't I?
Just a tad.
I like it. Now, see, you got to do that.
Gin and tonic works.
Marcus, you got to do it again. Keep them happy. I'm going to corrupt you properly now. Is hold that up again and go dilly dilly. You got to hear Marcus saying dilly dilly.
Dilly dilly. What's that about?
That's just brilliant. It's I think it's an old Budweiser advert or something like that. But we've just had Marcus Pye say dilly dilly. That's legendary.
Better than Lavender's Blue.
Yeah. We've got Simon House saying, looking forward to hearing Marcus. And just so you know, Marcus and I will be going into lots of depth in a little while, but we've got another guest before we do that I shall bring out in a moment. Tim Perry says, wow, amazing video intro. They're liking it. Thank you, mate. That's my new employee for visual PR that is just brilliant. His video editing is just fantastic, and he's really bolstered up the visual PR team that I'm absolutely ecstatic to have him on board. Some of you will know Kat Delocco, and it's actually her daughter's boyfriend, and he has just taken to visual PR brilliantly, and I think he and I are going to have a long-term partnership together working on this. So keep up the good work, Joe Marrow. You're an absolute hero, mate. George Gillespie, hi Chris, evening George, and he says, unsurprisingly excited for my first autumn classic. Can you imagine that, Marcus, it being your first autumn classic?
It was my first autumn classic back in 2012, and I haven't missed one since, and I don't intend to. It's something that you should be excited about and you should embrace, and you'll learn a lot about the cars and the drivers, and just a complete different visual experience. I think it's something that everyone should do.
Visual and aural experience, I think, as well, really. Some wonderful noises and smells, I find, as well. The smells are wonderful from these cars. John Green, hello, John. Evening, Dawesy. Paul Wiltshire says, evening all. I mentioned Kat Delocco, our very important boss. I call her the boss these days. Evening all. Matt Parr, one of our ex-saloon car racers, hopefully to be again one day, but he's also about to secure the sprint championship when I host the Great Western Sprint at Castle Combe next month at some point, I would imagine. Good evening, Chris and Marcus. Good to see you both. John Green says, we'll be there in Orange on Saturday, another one of our Orange heroes, and I'm delighted to hear it. Thanks in advance, John.
Yeah, we always like to see a Jerry of Marshals out there on the posts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Down for Marshals being a Jerry.
Goodness me. I'm going to use that one from now on. Matt Grills asks a question that you can probably maybe answer. Are the Lotuses going round the track?
Well, we're certainly going to see Lotuses racing.
Yes.
Because we've got Elites, we've got Elans, we've got Lotus 18 in Formula Junior, Lotus 2022, and a 22 from 62 as well, probably the favourite for the Formula Junior race. But I'm hoping that we're going to see some Lotuses, because it's the 75th anniversary of Colin Chapman's mark. I'm hoping we're going to see some in a cavalcade or a couple of cavalcades during the day.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm just looking again. We've got Graham Hill's 1967 Type 49 chassis 03 is going to be there.
Yeah, that's right. It's fantastic, and that's an amazing memory for me because, back in the day when Lotus developed this particular type of car, the Type 49, carrying the Ford Cosworth DFV V8 engine as a structural member, the first time that car raced in a Grand Prix was the Dutch Grand Prix in 1967, which was June the 4th, 1967, as you'll recall, Chris. I recall it because it was my 9th birthday, and Jim Clark won, on the debut of that car on that very day. And I saw it race with Jim Clark winning the British Grand Prix the following month at Silverstone.
It's just, I mean, it's just beautiful, isn't it? It really is.
It is.
I mean,
it really moved the goalposts a long way. And of course, it's got a kind of monocoque chassis, which is a sort of a unitary chassis with that engine bolted to the rear bulkhead. And it just looked the part, didn't it? It made a lot of the other cars around at the time look positively antique. And
it's the kind of thing I recall from my granddad's Scalextric and things like that when I used to go to theirs. It's just beautiful. But we got a big old mix. We got Jim Clark's Lotus Cortina. We got Lotus models through the years. I mean, even look at that, the Lotus Carlton. That is just an incredibly bonkers car, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you remember Jasper Carrot talking about that when it was new on television? And he turned around and said, it's a new family car from Vauxhall. It's got 563 horsepower, whatever the deal was. He said, family car? What kind of car is that for? The Fittipaldi family? And I guess sort of, that kind of fitted the bill.
So you doing that accent that just got Craig all excited. I could see him in the background there. You were talking his language then. You'll understand that when I bring him on. Sorry, Craig. I couldn't resist it, mate. Sorry.
I like the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus there. And of course, the top left is the gorgeous Type 14 Lotus Elite with the little 1216cc Coventry Climax FWE engine in it. And of course, the bodywork for those cars, the actual monocoque chassis body unit, the later ones were made in Bristol.
Oh, okay.
So it has a local connection to Castle Combe.
But I love that, we're going through the sort of like almost the Lotus versions of the supercars there through to the modern. And I was commentating on GT Cup up at Donington Park this last weekend. And we had the wonderful new Lotus Emira there as well. Phenomenal car. It's the first time it had ever touched the track. And so, and I think it had like one issue the whole weekend, and that was it, despite being the first time it had touched it. So, they're still going, which is brilliant. What else?
Yeah, it's a remarkable mark, and has a fantastic racing history at Castle Combe. The first win for Lotus at Castle Combe was in 1951 with Colin Chapman. So yeah, absolutely brilliant in a 750 Formula race with his Lotus Mark III, the first pure racer from Lotus. The previous cars were trials cars that occasionally went on track, but this was a proper thing with the Austin 7 engine really well tweaked, and the cylinder head was specially worked. They de-Siamesed the ports, so they had an inlet track for each of the cylinders, and it gave it a lot more power. Typical sort of Chapman innovation, and promptly was asked not to do that again. Theme that continued throughout Lotus's kind of checkered career on track.
Exactly.
But, yeah, he came back in with later cars and had a lot of success with the Mark 8 in 1954. But that, I think, the very first meeting that Chapman won at, I was reading somewhere on that same meeting, Mike Hawthorne, who went on to be Britain's world champion in 1958 in Grand Prix racing, he won 2 races in what was effectively a vintage Riley. So it was an auspicious day at Castle Combe in 51.
Wow. Before both of our times, that one, not just my time. But, quickly getting through the comments because I want to bring our next guest out as well. Paul Wiltshire says he's got red wine. Good man. I said about Matt Parr. We got Papa Parr on as well. Chris Parr. Good evening, both. Good to see you. Good to see you,
Chris.
Tim Perry says, "Well done, Dawesy. Properly corrupted." So they're pleased that I've corrupted you onto the gin as well, mate.
Didn't take much persuasion, to be honest.
None at all. As soon as you saw it, that was enough, wasn't it? Really.
We have a very, very good gin distillery about 600 meters from home here.
Oh, really?
Conquer Spirit, the spirit of Dorset.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Goodness me. I'd be living in there. I'd be bathing in there and everything.
On a Friday night, you can.
Oh,
It's
wow.
open house down there, and you can go in and you can sample the goods.
Oh, now I'm envious even more so. Goose, one of the Quarry Hardcore, says, evening, managed to get the day off. Good man. And Tim Perry says, awesome to hear. Chris, hello, Sav. Evening, Chris. Hello, mate. Tim Perry is one of our Orange Army, as I say, and it's his third autumn classic, and he'll be flagging at post 1. So you'll see him from your commentary box, Marcus.
Well, I hope he's not flagging. I hope he's sort of, alert.
Yeah.
The entire day.
Good point. And Goose has just cleared up what he means by his day off is he's got Saturday off so that he can actually be at the event, which I know he will be pleased about.
That's called a life-work balance, isn't it?
Absolutely. Oh, and of course, he's not going to be in orange. Tim Perry's going to be in white with his flat cap.
But no,
so even the marshals are getting into the spirit of it as well.
Excellent.
Matt's away for the sprint now. I'm gutted about that. So Paul Wiltshire says, in my 43 years of marshalling at Combe, the Autumn Classic is the best thing since the heydays of the 80s and 90s. Wow.
Well, there you go. You have it.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Works for me.
Okay. Goose says Jerry Sanger had an off in a Carlton, so we were talking about the Lotus Carlton, losing the brakes going up Avon Rise, so chucked it into the infield. Would
this be Terry Sanger rather than Jerry Sanger?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. I had the same thing. I had the same thing in a TVR Tuscan race when the diff failed, and I got flung into the infield over the top of Avon Rise about 140 miles an hour or something.
Wow!
Was hauled in front of the clerk of the course and grilled as to what had happened. And these things happen in race cars.
They do. Right, listen, let's get our next guest out. One of the press releases you may have seen today is that Castle Combe have gone into a partnership, in effect, with an organisation called Paddock Life that do these wonderful detailed magazines that is not just about motor racing, but about the lifestyle side of things. I probably butchered that description terribly there. The good news is we've got the man who knows what he's talking about. So we're going to bring out the main man, that what's he called, the editor-in-chief of Paddock Life. Let's bring him out. Craig Blake Jones. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good evening, Chris. I'm very good. I've followed your lead and had somebody bring me a gin and tonic.
I'm impressed. I need
to get a little plug in here. This is actually Jilk's Gin and Tonic from our friends at Jilk's Cafe. It's a spectacular gin that they won lots of awards for. So, Keith, if you're listening and watching, cheers. And if not, why aren't you watching?
Absolutely. Well, tell him he's got to watch at least that bit back. And I'm impressed. I'm the only one that's got to go and buy supermarket gin. Then you guys have got it on tap next to you and stuff.
I still have to buy it.
Well, yeah, of course, but it's local then, isn't it?
It is.
Just quickly catching up. Rob Jones says, evening, Chris. I'll be coming along on Saturday. Came last year and really enjoyed the whole day. I bet you will indeed. I'm not. I'm at Alton Park. I'm missing Saturday because I'm commentating for Classic Sports Car Club at Alton Park because we got it covered with Marcus. You've got Clive over in 2, haven't you? Clive Woodward and John Moon down doing the interviews.
Absolutely, yeah. I hope Clive's not going to be trying to flog me one of those chairs for old people. I've seen him on television doing the advert.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that.
He's a thespian, don't you know?
He is, isn't he? Very much so. But most importantly, Craig, let me start by putting the most obvious question out there. What is Paddock Life?
Well, Paddock Life is it's a lifestyle magazine. It's actually becoming a little bit more than that at the moment, but generally we're a magazine. I'm a complete petrol head, and thank you very much for asking me on tonight. Castle Combe has always had a place in my heart. I was an ARDS instructor down there over a decade ago. Did a lot of track stuff down there, but Paddock Life started almost 10 years ago, just sort of accidentally, as all these things do, as it was this sort of ultimate vanity project where it was a magazine for me and my mates. I was at Monza at the Formula One as a guest of Ferrari and thinking, this is fantastic, but I just got thinking, there's all these people here that are going to go back home on Monday, and what have they got that kind of they can drop on their desk or on their coffee table that says, hey, I was there. You can hardly wear your pass, can you? You just look like, that looks a bit silly on Monday in the office. Whereas, so I thought what we need here is a cool magazine that people want to steal out of hospitality to take home, that says, well, I must have been somewhere to get that magazine. And that was sort of the ethos behind it. So I was writing some pieces for another magazine, that F1 magazine at the time. And I just thought, there's a gap here for something that people want to take home. So never been in publishing ever in my life. But I've film, television, entertainment, and branding. And I just thought, let's create something that I know, myself and my mates would want to kind of stick under our coats and sneak out the door with, or nick from the hotel room. So that's what we did. And we're nearly 10 years in, 22 issues. 22 is about to drop. A little late, just because of a few family issues we've had this year, which we're a very small team, and that's I'm sort of the bottleneck on everything we do, as well as the sort of most of the time I'm leading the charge, but when I can't lead the charge, everything sort of peters out into a less than a stroll. So so it's 180 pages of automotive art, or automotive porn, as a lot of people have said. It's beautiful pictures. It's everything from like I say, we started, our roots are very much in Formula One, but and it started because I was a massive Formula One fan, but I kind of got bored with that really quickly from a journalistic and a photographic point of view, because I found myself flying all over the world, and it was exactly the same every 2 weeks. With the sun in a different place, because the paddock just ups and moves, and there's not really much difference. And for all we had access, that access is relatively limited. And then I went out to Misano because Chrysler had lent me a Dodge Hellcat to do as they do. Yeah, as they do, to do a bit of review and a trip with. And I thought, but I had to pick it up in Munich. And you can't kind of cross water with press cars, so over here we're great. We get a UK press car, it's brilliant in UK, but if it's a European-based press car, it's not like I can have it over here. So I thought, where can I go? And I had a look, and there was a GT race on, which was then the Blancpain GT race. And my now business partner, Chris Dunhill, and I flew into Munich, picked this car up, and literally flew across to from Munich to Misano, taking in some fantastic roads, and rocked up in the paddock. And this was my kind of first time I'd been to a big international GT race for many, many years. So it was all the cars we'd been writing about as road cars in full GT3 form. And but the great thing, we were in the paddock as one of the races finished, and the guys came up on the podium and they took their helmets off, and we looked at each other and went, bloody hell, they're our age. It was like, this is cool, and it was proper gentleman's racing. And we ended up being quite a mainstay of the magazine, because we'd always aimed at that kind of high net worth petrol head. That was our target audience. Make it very aspirational, try and be the sort of Vogue of car mags. And we found this audience. We were strolling around the paddock, and there's the fantastic Lamborghini GT3 car, but parked behind the trailer was a white Ferrari, LaFerrari Aperta, that the guy had driven to the circuit in. So I thought, this is where the money is. This is where our advertisers need to communicate, and therefore this is a great way for us to go, because at that time the magazine was available. It was in the hospitality suites. We were in seat backs of private jets, in the hotel rooms near the circuits, and it was just given away for those that were lucky enough to be there and get it. So our revenue is purely derived from advertisers. So I needed a big carrot to get those guys to spend. So it was like, here you go. You're talking to the people that ask when they can have it, not how much is it. So that was, that was the ethos behind it, and it just grew and grew. But my love of classic cars, which kind of started when they weren't classics. So I just found the content there was so, in a way, a lot of the modern cars, as fabulous as they are, and I do lots of work with Lamborghini, and they send me loads of brilliant supercars to play with, but generally the modern supercar can become a bit soulless. I mean, I used to come down to Castle Combe and do corporate days as a driver in the 360 and a Murcielago we had, and brilliant fun. But I think the advances in technology have taken a lot of the soul out of driving modern cars. Whereas you jump in, I was lucky enough, and it's in issue 22, to spend 4 or 5 days in a Lamborghini Miura, and it was just divine. That is my favorite all-time car, and it was like, you never want to meet your heroes. Well, I was very, very nervous about getting in the car in case it was absolute rubbish, and it wasn't. It was just fantastic, and what an experience. We had that and a brand new Urus Performante the same weekend for Supercar Fest, and we ended up kind of blowing out most of Supercar Fest and going and do some really cool photo shoots around the Northampton area, and just rocked up Saturday afternoon at Supercar Fest in a green Miura and a bright yellow Performante, and it was like, it was like Brad Pitt walking into your local pub. The impact the Miura had on all those people that had come to see modern supercars, it was just jaw-dropping. And what a fantastic car. But that's been the journey of paddock life, to be able to get to drive these cars and write about them and experience them. And that's what we try and get in our pages, the sort of passion that myself and my team have. And, the photography, one of my, I started it with John Breen, who's a brilliant motorsport photographer. But I've got, I do a lot of work with Paul Ward now, who's an award-winning fashion photographer, who's a petrol head. So he's looking at it. So John's pictures are in one style and Paul's are completely different, and then we get, we're lucky enough that because we're in proper print, all the great photographers send us their images. So it really is, just a catalogue of fabulous pictures with a few badly written words by me stringing them together. So that's paddock life, and it's everything. Like I say, it's the gin, what the people that love what we love. Very rarely are they only into the cars. They tend to be, they might like boats, they might like aeroplanes, watches. A little 960 watch here from the boys, that a little bespoke brand that I discovered through the magazine. And and it's just been great to really delve into this wider world of petrol hedonism and be able to bring it in glorious Technicolor. It's designed to be a coffee table book that sits there and people thumb through it, and it's a collectible. It doesn't go in the recycling, we hope. But it's a mammoth task to create it. So we aim at 4 a year, but this year, like I say, I had a few family issues with my parents, so it took me out the game a little bit. So we're probably going to get 2 out. But when I first was looking to what the format was, I had the Lamborghini Owners magazine on my desk, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting size. I'll do it like that. Had I done a bit more research, I probably wouldn't have done, because it cost me about £3 per unit extra to have it this ridiculous size. But that was the idea. It was about something that was special and collectible. And what I used to like about that then, it was so typically Italian, that magazine. You'd get one every so often. You never knew when it was going to come. When it did, it was fabulous. But it wasn't like you get it every month, you get it every quarter. You get it when Lamborghini decide they're going to make one, and you get it. So there's a little bit of that with paddock life at the moment, or that's my excuse anyway.
Yeah, hey, you've convinced me, that's for sure. I mean, you mentioned, for example, going over to the what was the Blancpain GT World Challenge back then, GT World Challenge as it is these days. you know, I'm very lucky that I get to commentate on those kind of things, and British GT. And why I include that is that it's SRO, isn't it? Stefan Rattel.
Yeah,
he gets
brilliant.
that mentality.
Yeah, totally. I
And,
mean,
and I love that mix of modern and historic stuff. I mean, like, for example, I've been at some of the GT stuff, and say Dario Franchitti, for example, one that jumps to mind, multiple Indy title and Indy 500 winner, Scottish, as you can tell from his name, and he will rock up with this just unbelievably jaw-dropping classic Ferrari.
Yeah,
You'll be parked in the paddock with that. So it's always that mix of old and new. And I guess you've also got to keep your mind open about the modern and the new and the historic cars.
Totally. You know, we love the modern cars and getting to sit in them, but the passion that I just love the old cars and classic racing car. And we very recently, it's brilliant to be involved with with Castle Combe Classic, and it's the start of a relationship through next season, which about us bringing what's happening there in great, with great photography into the pages of Paddock Life, maybe doing a few events with them. But it's, the whole racing classics is so much more exciting than some of the modern cars. I mean, I think GT racing is great. Formula One, unfortunately, has just got into a bit of a rut and a groove, I think. And it's just not great spectator sport anymore. But that said, Sunday's race was probably the best race I've watched in Formula One in 4 or 5 seasons. But when I was at the GT races, just jumping on and just sitting in Stefan's fantastic hospitality suite with a big screen, having a gin and tonic and watching it, there's always something to watch. But with the classic racing, I think that's even more so. It's just proper wheel-to-wheel racing. And one of the biggest regrets I've got about this coming Saturday is we're not racing there, because we've recently been racing, which is a massively new departure for us. And it's down to us using our brand. We're co-producing a TV series that's coming out next year called The Paddock Speed Shop, which is young people resto modding classics for their generation.
Wow.
And that came about because, I love Goodwood Revival, and wandering around the paddock a few years ago at Goodwood, I started thinking, God, we're all getting a bit old here. I'm not seeing enough young people. And I think with the current media push about not driving this ULEZ and electric cars, and there's nothing for a young generation of drivers in their 20s. There's more telling them to get an app and a lift than there is to go buy a car. And then I think if they do that, they miss out on the massive social side of driving. When we were all younger, your car was your freedom. You went out and it was your social life. It was everything. And the proliferation of events that, not flying around the world during COVID meant I was able to go to all the local events, and things like Wheels on Wednesday up in Worcester. There's 700 cars in a field on a Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and it's just fabulous. It's as grassroots as it gets, but it's things like Caffeine and Machine and Jilks and all these destinations now have created a fantastic social scene that having a car gives you access to. And I think it's incumbent on all of us in our various media roles to get this next generation to actually understand that and do it. And there's a very big thing where you see kids in their slammed out modified Novas or whatever, and people cross the road when they see them and look at them as hooligans. But if they're in a classic car, they're immediately you cross the road to them and you go, oh, I had one of those, and that's the difference. And it's finding that mix and trying to get some of these kids that are in You know, they spend fortunes on these modified cars, and when they finished, it's worth the grand sum of sod all because they modified the hell out of it. There's no market. Whereas if you spend that on a classic, it's actually the deposit on your first house. When
and Marcus, I'm going to come to you in a second because I heard you nodding fervently there, so I want to just pick up on this. But one thing I want to first say is that at Donington Park this weekend, the Sports 2000s were out, which are wonderful history of sports cars in reality there. And there was a young man who had just started looking after one of those cars, and he had an opportunity to go and work for Williams Formula One team from a mechanical perspective of some description. I don't know the details. And the story that's been relayed to me is he turned it down because he says, my passion is working on classic cars. And I was like, that's a young man that is just sort of coming out of learning all this stuff. And what he turned down Williams F1 to go and work on classic things. And I thought that was wonderful. And I thought you'd like that story, Craig. But Marcus, I saw you fervently shaking your head there on that comment about the getting people together with the love of cars and
I think that's absolutely right. It's totally right, and you see the generations go to Goodwood for the revival, which we've just had, and when it enthuses my 19-year-old daughter to go there and have a look and dress up and really embrace the scene, then it's got to be good news, because a lot of modern sport, including Formula One for a lot of people, is inaccessible. I don't feel part of it when they get there. They don't see very much because they're usually in the next county behind a fence. Whereas at Goodwood, it's tremendous. And I heard what Craig was saying also about the correlation between people who like cars and boats, aircraft, whatever. Just as an aside, in my Goodwood revival preview in Autosports, and I've worked for Autosport for 46 years now, I was very, very fortunate that my wife sponsored a flight in a Spitfire from Goodwood last month. And I've had more reaction to my write-up of flying in the Spitfire with Spitfires.com at Goodwood at Hangar 8 there, over the circuit and writing a really nice piece about it. I've had more reaction, positive reaction than anything else in the last probably 2 or 3 years, which I think is really interesting, because so many people in the classic car world find that aspirational. And aspiration is something we've got to breed into the younger people, because we're getting on a bit, we've been around for a long time, and we've been there, we've seen it. And it's all too easy to say, we had the best of it. And in many ways, with club racing, etc., and Formula One, we did have the best of it. But motorsport still has a lot to offer. And as Craig was saying, the local events, Caffeine and Machine, I've been to on just a quiet kind of Friday on the way to Alton Park, absolutely brilliant. And you see the people arriving in customized VWs, and they're arriving on the Friday afternoon for the weekend's event. It's absolutely brilliant, all that sort of stuff. But back when I was a kid, there were so many local car clubs. And in those days, of course, back in the 1960s, you all went to the local chap who was a wizard at tuning Weber carburetors or SU carburetors, whatever, in a local village garage. And that kind of ethos, much of it went with the advent of modern cars and plug-in modules and bits and pieces. You look under the bonnet, you see an expanse of plastic. Where's the spark plug? Well, I'm not really quite sure, but I've got to remove half an acre of plastic to get to it. Back in the day, when you had real craftsmen who'd stick a screwdriver to their ear and put it on top of the sort of engine and sort of listen in, that's whatever. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. And that's why, going back to your point about this young engineer with the Sports 2000 wanting to work with classic cars, there are people who still see that as a big opportunity. It might be a niche market, but it's a market that is sustainable. It's a market that is attainable for people who want to go and play historic racing cars. And
which is massive, and it's not shown any sign of abating. I mean, you said that we were having conflicts because they were here, there, and everywhere. Well, that straight away slaps of the fact that there wasn't enough of the mechanically minded, the preparers, the whatever, to go around for what it was. I've had, you go to, say, the Masters Historic and things like that, which I'm also lucky enough to cover, and you've got, you know, sports car racers racing in these historics, touring car racers racing these historics. You speak to the Jordan family, they've turned away from the modern touring cars, purely focusing, and GTs, as of course Mike Jordan used to race. The thing they race themselves more often is the classic Mini, and they're preparing cars and occasionally jumping in with the owner of those cars. And you speak to Andrew Jordan, for example, who's still not very old, and yet he turns around and says the most fun he has is in the Lotus Cortina that they have prepared immaculately over, and that's not just British touring cars, but he was in World Rallycross as well, in incredible pieces of kit, and that's the most fun that they get.
I can see that because the cars move around. They're entertaining to drive. They've been modified beyond all recognition. A lot of these modern historic touring cars, you don't see the cars. You don't see a Lotus Cortina cocking its wheel like you did when Jim Clark raced one in the 1960s, and that's a bit sad in a way. And also the engines are making probably 25% more power than they did. But interestingly, last year at Goodwood, when they had the all Lotus Cortina race, or it might have been at the start of this year actually, you noticed that the real aces, the sort of the Josh Cooks and people like that who we see at Castle Combe from time to time, they're about 3 seconds quicker than Jim Clark was in 1965, with all that suspension tweaking, all that, all the tyre technology, all the power, etc. Jim Clark must have been rather good, mustn't he? Well, he was good. I think to see him win quite a bit back in the day. And that's what we're going to celebrate. You know, this weekend at Castle Combe is all about historic racing. It's all about Lotus, and we're going to see some incredible action over the course of the day. And there's nothing quite like historic racing, and it's the thing that's really sort of captured my imagination over the last 20, 25 years. It's moved on a lot, but if you look at Formula One, half the problem there is now that you've got 24 races next year, whatever it is, and it's too many. It's they're running places that we've never heard of, and we're certainly never going to go to. And for the logistics of moving everything around, and the teams, and the wear and tear on the personnel, let alone the drivers and the engineers who are in the front line, is horrendous. And it can't be productive for their mental well-being, apart from anything else.
I agree completely. I mean, Craig, before we let you go, I want to then quickly bring it back to this weekend, as you heard Marcus saying about it. It's a wonderful event. Everybody's looking forward to. You've got a place in your heart for Castle Combe, which you can probably guess Marcus and I do too, for obvious reasons. What is the partnership with Paddock Life and Castle Combe going to bring to both this weekend and going forward in the future for both sides?
Well, I mean, obviously we're going to get the magazine into the shop there, so people can just pick it up and buy back issues and things like that, which is always great because it's one of those you kind of see it and feel it. This weekend we're going to be there. Well, half of our team are going to be there because we're actually with Motul, who sponsor our TV show, who is obviously a big Castle Combe sponsor as well. So our driver, Harvey, who's only 20, he's at the Motul Hill Climb Day at Shelsley Walsh, which is just around the corner from us here, in the 61 Cooper S that Lucy from Paddock Speed Shop's just painted, and it's put back together. So we're in the process of sort of prepping that to make sure that it's race ready in the workshop at the moment, just to give it a few runs up the hill to give it get it sort of bedded in, and we're going to race that next season. So half the team are going to be at Shelsley. I'm going to be with some of the other guys. We're going to bring the Cobra down that we just raced at Silverstone, so that will be on display. Like I said, it's a shame we're not racing because we really wanted to race the Cobra there, but we sadly in our race at Silverstone on Saturday, Harvey was doing a fantastic job in a very uncompetitive 1962 Cobra 260 against 289s and E-types and everything, and he was having an epic post-pit stop battle with an E-type. Unfortunately, the E-type that ended up burying itself in the barrier and catching his old boss in a Shelby Mustang by 3/4 of a second a lap when it appears the head gasket blew on cylinder number 2 and the conrod passed straight through the piston, flattened out the spark plug, and we now have a sump full of piston. So we left it as is because the car was with Motul in the paddock on display at Goodwood last weekend, and we're going to trailer it down and display it, and then next week we're going to pull it to pieces and decide what we're going to do with it for next year. My vote is we put a proper racing engine in it and we roll our sleeves up and go for some podiums, because we've got a great young driver and I think he's very capable of getting on the podium. He will race something next year. He'll be in the Mini in whatever series we can get that into. But we'd love to be racing the Cobra again. If not, there's a C1 Corvette in our midst that we might trot out. There's something we're going to race something historic, because talking about the wear and tear on the Formula One teams, we just did pre-Silverstone, me and the team, and they're in their 20s, so they can handle it a lot better than me. We just did 10 weekends flat without break of racing, because we got offered the Cobra to race, because we're on the TV show. We're building a Morris Minor hill climb car, which is what I used to do when I was their age. I used to hill climb up against Nick Mann's V8 Morris Minor. I was there in my A series powered Moggy, so we're building one of those for the show with a Cosworth Duratec mid-mounted in the back. So, and they're building this from
as you would,
yeah, as you do. So that's going to be a beast of a car. But as with television, things got delayed. We're in the middle of moving premises because of the fabrication side. So one of my readers turned round at an art gallery launch that we were covering in London for this cool artist called Ray Rossi, and he's like a bit of a punk rocker artist. And one of my readers is a massive fan of Slaughter and the Dogs, who were actually playing live outside in the city of London, which is a bit of a 70s throwback punk moment. And we get chatting, we've had a few drinks, and he said, "Why don't you race my Cobra at Goodwood?" And I went, "Okay." So the car had raced Goodwood previously twice. So we went, "Yeah, brilliant, let's do it." And he was like, "Seriously, let's do this." So we picked the conversation up when we all got back to the office. About the end of March, I went and picked this Cobra up. And then we sort of went, okay, what are we going to do? I spoke to Andy over at Motul, and he said, right, let's race it at Silverstone Festival. So we created this livery for it and got it ready. And then we had to sort of very quickly learn to be a race team. But more to the point, Harvey, who had taken his ARDS test at the back end of last season at Castle Combe, so he got his race club license as part of this is how you go racing into hill climb for the TV show. We suddenly had to get to race national level to race at Silverstone. So as part of the storyline of the show, we know, we've got to find 6 races to race and get his clerk of the course signatures to get his upgrade. But we've only got one racing car, and it's the Cobra, and there's not 6 classic races we can go out and do.
Oh, but he can't get one by marshalling. There's and
he
marshal get one that way.
He was going to do a marshalling one. Unfortunately, and he wanted to do that, but the timing threw up that there was a race. But our sponsors, Nankang, actually sponsor the Nankang City Car Challenge, which is C1s, 107s, Peugeots, and Toyota Aigos. And Steve turned around and said, "Well, I've got 2 cars. Take one of those racing." So exactly 10 weeks before Silverstone, Harvey and I turn up at Anglesey, just the 2 of us, to go racing for the first time. So for me, this is like, about nearly 40 years since the last time I went racing. And so we turn up at Anglesey in a car that's been given us to by the sponsors. It'll be fine. It failed everything on scrutineering.
Oh, no.
So there's the two of us with the tools in the trailer and a car, and we literally rebuilt the car in 2 hours to get it through scrutineering. And he went out and raced this and got his first 2 ticks. So we then spent every weekend going racing with this C1. We raced the Cobra at Alton Park with a Keep club and in the pouring rain. We did a testing day at Castle Combe back end of August. So, that was, a massive 10 weeks dedicated to going racing. So the youngsters learnt to be a race team. And made every mistake you can imagine, but when it came to Silverstone, they were absolutely bang on it, surrounded by epic race transporters and preparers that have been doing this their whole lives. And there you've got, I've practically made myself redundant, and we've got, 24-year-olds. As a friend of mine that lives down near Castle Combe, actually, he helps, so he's the sort of the grey hair in the paddock on the TV show. But, it's made, Harvey, one of his pals from the Bicester Heritage course that he's on, he's an apprentice there, and Ethan and Lucy preparing a 1962 Mark I Cobra to go racing. And, we had, the weekend was not without its dramas, and it was a brilliant race. Unfortunately, like I said, we blew the head gasket at the latter half of the race. But from a TV point of view, when the episode comes out, I think everyone will agree it was the best way to finish the story from a televisual point of view. But unfortunately, it means he's not going to be on the grid on Saturday at Castle Combe, which he's a bit gutted about. So he'll have to go and throw a mini up Shelsley Walsh instead. But
I'm sure he'll suffer that one. But it's like Jed Doyle, one of our Orange Army, said he actually tried to get him at Combe as well. So they tried to get him to be at Combe marshalling by the sounds of that.
Yeah, no, so, yes, he did. Yes, yeah, and so it's been a brilliant experience, but I think our partnership with Castle Combe next year is going to bring us, because with the TV show as well, we'll be able to do more filming down there. But we just want to get it into the pages of Paddock Life. I've got we do a lot of art coverage in Paddock Life as well, and one of the artists created these 3D reliefs of race tracks, and I've got 3 tracks on the wall in my office, because when I did the feature, he said, what are your 3 favourite circuits? It was Spa, Castle Combe and Monza, and it's not often you see Castle Combe sat between Monza and Spa, is it? So that was it's brilliant memories for me down there, a decade ago, doing demo laps and ARDs instructing and things. And to go back there testing with Harvey and the team a few weeks ago was brilliant, and we're really looking forward to the weekend. So everybody come say hi, please buy a magazine. We're going to bring down the Cobra and this fabulous 56 Healy 100 Le Mans that we've got, and so they're going to be on display. We'll have a couple of other sexy cars with us as well, which is what we kind of do. We have a lot of contacts to trot out some very nice cars. So hopefully through next season, we'll be helping not only relay this around the world to our readers about what a great little circuit it is, but also on the live events, the more social side of it, we'll have our stand in the in the sort of paddock area or whatever, with some very trot some very, very nice cars out, and just create a bit of a stir for the public to come and look at. And no doubt we'll be there racing a few weekends as well, which will be great.
I mean, it sounds brilliant to me, and I think you'll have just won even more fans by sort of making a comment that Spa, Monza, Combe, that's going to really get the fans bubbling away. And we all that are watching this, and myself and Marcus included, know exactly where you're coming from. We love the place to high heaven.
Coming over Avon Rise, flat out in a Murcielago, is an experience.
Yes, I can imagine. I really, really can. I can imagine. Just quickly then, a final comment before I let you go, Craig, is did I hear something about this Cobra you were talking about having some kind of links to Elvis Presley? You
did indeed. It's the Cobra we've got is chassis number 2038. which is kind of affectionately known as Boo 8 because that's its number plate, which if you work it out spells something else as well. But it was used. It was the one of two Shelby American press cars when Ford got involved. So it's got a fabulous history. And it was promptly lent to, I think it was Paramount Studios that made the Elvis films. So it was actually in the film Viva Las Vegas. So I had to go and watch the film because everyone's saying, "Oh, Elvis has driven the car," and I thought, I can't be repeating this.
No, I agree.
So I went and watched. The car is definitely in the film. Elvis drives an Elva, not a Cobra. And it's in all the garage scenes. It's there. It's actually silver in the film. It's now it's white at the moment. It started life red, but as we know, Carroll Shelby painted his press cars a different color every week, so it looked like he'd got loads of them. And then, so it did that. Then it did another film called The Killers with Lee Marvin and Ronald Reagan, who both did drive the car. And then after that, it sort of languished in the workshop around the back because it was damaged actually during Viva Las Vegas. And, I've done a lot of work on the car and you can see the scars where the chassis has been rewelded after that incident on the filming. But it then was sent out to work, which must have been a very hard life, in the Carroll Shelby School of Performance Driving. So you can imagine the abuse that car's had. And then it then sort of disappeared from America, turned up in Europe in the mid-70s on the circuits as a race car. And then its its owner, that my friend bought the car, I think in about 2015, had a complete rebuild done. Apparently had the engine rebuilt, but I beg to differ on that one. It was a very straight road car when we picked it up. So obviously, it's got the roll hoop and everything that was put in for racing, the grille removed, but it had a full interior. So we removed the interior, stuck a tillet seat in and put new harnesses in because the others had expired, replaced the fire system and everything. So it's, would withstand any scrutineering, and it's still sitting. So it's currently, when it's there on show on Saturday, it's got its hard top on, which looks pretty cool. It's in its full motor livery and it's got its nice chunky Dunlop racing tyres. So it's a mean looking car, and it is as it was towed off the Silverstone circuit.
Such a shame, because I've always said the Cobra noise is the Spitfire of the roads. Absolutely,
it's just outstanding. We've got a GT40 in the workshop at the moment, and sadly it's not a real one. It's a very good copy, but it's got the right engine in it, and it's got no silencers whatsoever, and it's just ridiculous, we're doing some work on that for the owner.
Jed's asked a question about the Cobra. Is it still number 17?
It is indeed, yes. Yes, it's still number 17. Yeah, and the Mini is also number 17 that he's going up the hill with. That's Harvey's racing number, and the Citroen C1 is also number 17.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Quite so much attention.
I understand. Listen, Craig, we could carry on talking forever with you, definitely, with everything that you're talking about. That I think the relationship with Combe that we have as well is very obvious, and it's an absolute treat to have you on. And I'd imagine we'll have some more conversations going forward. And I think you and I will probably need to speak off air as well at some point. It's been wonderful to catch up with everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
I would say look forward to seeing you on Saturday, but I won't be there. But hopefully I will at some point.
Well, I will. And
I'll see you on Saturday.
And you're very welcome to come up to the commentary box, Craig, and come and see what we do from up there.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. That'd be great. Well, I'll see you on Saturday, and
I look forward.
We will catch up off screen, and I'm sure soon. And thanks for having me, gents. It's been brilliant. And we'll see you all on the stand on Saturday with some nice cars and some great racing.
Indeed, absolutely. So Craig Blake-Jones from Paddock Life, Paddock coombe-life.com, and then you can check it all out at Coombe. Craig, much appreciated. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers.
Fantastic, that, Marcus. I'm intrigued by this magazine now. I'm going to have a look, and it got both of us excited and everything, didn't it? It was bringing all of the emotions out there.
Do I need more magazines? Yes, probably I do.
Looking, there's a few gaps behind you there.
I'll keep it quiet. But what we can do, looking forward to Saturday's Castle Combe Autumn Classic, is pick up on that link of the Cobras that Craig was so enthused about, because in the GT and Sports Car Cup, we now have 3 AC Cobras as of today, and that is really fantastic. I don't think we've had 3 in a GT SCC race in the history of it. It's the 6th one at the Autumn Classic, and last year's winners, of course, are in there. Chris Childs and his dad, Chris Childs Senior. We've got Mark Williams from Bristol, son of the late Ted. And Mark's done, I think, 4 before, and he's finished 2nd and 3rd, so he's overdue a win. And heard this morning that Alex Thistlethwaite has now acquired an AC Cobra, added it to his stable, and he's either going to bring that, which he's not driven at this point, or he will bring his Aston Martin DB4, which is a pucker car going back to the 1960s, and whichever he brings. I mean, at the moment it could well be the Cobra. We're going to find out on Thursday, but it looks like we could have 3 Cobras. We've got a couple of Jaguar E-types in there as well. We've got that very quick team, Rhea Salter, the German lady, and Andy Newell driving the bright turquoise car we've seen all over Europe for many a year. We've got the big Healey's as well. And I mean, Castle Combe is a hotbed of big Healey action, going right back to '67 when I was first there, and saw the great John Chatham and Stuart Hands dicing in these cars in torrential rain as it was back there. Good old British summer. Nothing really changes. So '67, we got very wet watching them, but brilliant. And there's a superb entry. 33 cars entered in that GT and Sports Car Cup race, over 90 minutes in the middle of the afternoon, and never a dull moment in that. We've got good racing in all of the classes. We've got Lotus Elite taking on a batch of MGBs in GT2 and the TVR Grand Tourer Mark IIIs, similarly powered to the MGBs, lighter though, and with a cross-flow cylinder head, which confers advantages. There's a 911 Porsche in the middle of that as well. So it's tremendous. I'm really excited about the thing. A little Lola Mark 1 in there as well. And that's cars that were founded the Lola Empire back in the late 1950s. And it's a little roller skate which can run rings around everything else in the corners, and may well be in the top few with Nick Finberg driving it as the race progresses. Really, really good. It's a fantastic series. It kicked off back in 2007. It's run by Flavio Marseille and his wife Vanessa, and they put such effort in behind it to make it a great social event. The camaraderie there is particularly strong. The ethos of it is great cars, sensible driving standards. You've got to drive hard in these things, but really great driving standards is an absolute key. And it's a pit stop race, so tactics come into it. Yeah, really, really good. I can't wait.
What's this mini broad speed GTS?
Yeah, interesting. There's a touring car division in the series now, and it's basically a kind of a rebodied Cooper S by Ralph Broad. They're based in Southam in Warwickshire, and it's a superb little mini coupe, which the Locke family have, and I think it's Alice Locke driving this weekend with Matt Green. Usually Alice's dad drives with her, but he's not available this weekend. They've been regulars in the GTSCC with the old Windmill and Lewis MGB, a car that was run by the Bristol MG dealer back in the 60s, and it's a car with a long racing history. But they've added other cars to their stable, and this little broad speed GTS, which debuted this year, is something to look out for. It's something you won't have seen before in all probability.
And of course, this the GT and Sports Car Cup is administered by the Castle Combe Racing Club these days as well.
It is, and it's one of those series which entrance is by invitation only. You can't just rock up and say, "Do you know, I'd like to come and join." You've got to prove that you kind of fit in with the whole way it works. They certainly. It's not a race series for pot hunters. You go there and you celebrate the cars that you can bring and your heroes who drove them back in the day, and that's all you can ask from a historic car race, really. You just treat the cars with respect, drive them hard, and what could possibly go wrong?
Oh, nothing at all. They're the last qualifying session as well, so they're qualifying at 11 for 30 minutes. But
that's right, and they all run on Dunlop treaded tyres. So so there's more power than grip. So plenty of sliding, plenty of oversteer, and plenty of excitement through the corners, particularly where the big Healeys are concerned. And of course, we've got the maestro of Healeys, Jeremy Welsh, driving in there. He's an absolute legend, as was his late father Dennis, of course, and he kind of embodies the spirit of Healey racing. And a couple of years ago, finished first and second, which is a bit greedy, driving with two of his clients, Mark Home and Doug Muirhead, in two very famous Healeys. So it's great to see that Healeys will be to the fore. It might not be a GT4 car that wins. It might be a car from the GT3 class again, which takes victory.
Fair dues. Just meant to put this up earlier. I know Craig's in the background, so he'll still see this. Is that Jed also said, he asked, is it still number 17? He said, fab, that's the one my mate John Hancock has been involved with. The thumbs just come up there from Craig in the background. He knows all about that. So many positive comments coming in. I mean, I'm just going to quickly go back. Apologies, guys. I know I haven't caught up with any of you really doing it. Ian Cowley was saying about that he's going to be there hoping to take his Mini. Matt Coyle, our Saloon Car Championship coordinator, he said he's watched the very first one at Combe, and he's now privileged to help out on Saturday. Just need to borrow some vintage goggles. Shameless request. So
vintage Googles, in fact.
Googles, yeah. That's the modern vintage, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
He's been Googling for vintage Googles. That's the one.
That's what's stymieing him so far. It's really brilliant, the Autumn Classic thing, and this particular race has extra interest for Lotus enthusiasts because
70 years.
A couple of Elans in there as well. They run in GT4 against the big bangers because it's the class structure is based on performance, not necessarily engine capacity. So the Elans go in there and they have to race against the Cobras, the E-types, Aston Martins if they come out. But they've won in the past. With the S's and Bobbies, it does throw it up, doesn't it? Absolutely.
They really can. We know that
exactly right. Yeah, really good.
Carl Dyson, one of our officials, Autumn Classic, one of my favourite meetings of the year. As always, very much looking forward to it. Phil Martin says, looking forward to Saturday. Can't wait to see you all. Chris James says, good evening. We'll be there the weekend bringing my young granddaughter for the first time. Hope the weather is good. So do I. Paul Wiltshire, another one of our marshals, says, marshalled at both F1 and the Revival, much preferred the Revival proper cars. And I think that's what we see. Tim Perry's hoping that Craig and his team will get the Cobra fix for next year. Our very own Beardy says, evening all, looking forward to a great event. And you'll be busy, won't you, mate? I know that, managing all of the mighty Orange Army. Tim Perry as well said, thank you, Craig. We'll see you Saturday. Dilly. Peggy Spackman has said, our little family will be there Saturday. Ross supporting Mark Williams in the Formula Juniors. I presume that's different to the Mark Williams that's out in the Cove.
Well, it's Mark Williams from Bristol, got a DeSantis,
Yeah.
I think, a really rare car. So that'll be good. Yeah.
So there's I know Ross is supporting that, and she'll be there working the fudge and sweet stall, and their little daughter Emily will be joining too. The circuit is one of her favourite places to be. She's going to love the event. She is, and that's the key thing, isn't it, Marcus? The spirit around the circuit, in the paddock, on the banks, is just second to none.
It is, and it's a wonderful event. It's the club races at Castle Combe, the championship races are really good events, but this has just a different feel to it, and once in a while, a different feel is good.
I agree, 100%. Tim Perry, one of the marshals again. I could list this talk of classic cars all night. John Creech, we all know John Creech. Hello, mate. Hope you're well. We've got a grid walk. You do, and it's the Formula Juniors that are on the grid walk, because they'll be the first race after the lunch, so they'll be there for you can go and walk out. And he says he sees that Ian Flux is doing a book signing. He is indeed, that for Flux' sake. I had to take that slowly then, didn't I? Not sure if there are times for the signing. I don't know the answer to that, if I'm honest. You'll probably keep people
I think stop me and buy one, a bit like an ice cream.
But yes, quite. I keep sort of wanting to get Mr. Flux on a Combe TV, but it scares the bejesus out of me of getting him on. I've had many a conversation in the paddock, and it's like much of it non-repeatable, and which is why I also want to get his book, because there's many a tale to be told there.
Yeah, very much so.
We touched on there that the lunchtime grid walk is for the Formula Juniors. I adore those. By the way, just quickly interrupt that. Kat Dalocco says there'll be a timetable on the day for signing, etc. So keep an eye out, Mr. Creech and everyone else. There will be timetables of everything that's going on off circuit as well. But sorry, Formula Juniors. I adore those things. They are like racing cigar cases.
They are.
That are just wonderful in every way.
What I love about them, of course, is that firstly, of course, Formula Junior originated in 1958, which is the year that I was born. So I feel an affinity with them. But they trace the kind of history of motorsport, that transition from the front engine cars to the rear. And you'll see both elements within the field. From the really early, the Lexus HF1 of Duncan Rabaliati, the Flying Carrot, as it's known, right through to Horatio Fitzsimon, winner of the recent Chichester Cup race at Goodwood. He's not raced at Castle Combe before. He's been to the revival of Watched, but he will take some catching in that Lotus 22, the ex-Tommy Reed car. He's a very, very exciting young talent. He's 23. I don't see many people getting with him if it's totally dry. If it's wet, one or two specialists come forward, of course. But no, it's a brilliant entry. Lots of different manufacturers in the field. There's a Di Tommaso, there's a De Sanctis, there's a Stangalini, another of the Italian marks, like a baby Maserati 250F. Absolutely brilliant. And there'll be Lolas and Brabhams and Lotuses and plenty of other things as well. The Condor from Worpleston near Guildford, Alex Morton's Condor, is a quick car among the front engine cars. Germany's as well. And it's a really fine series. It's been run for many, many years by Duncan Rabaliati and his daughter, Sarah Mitrica, who's based in Lithuania. But orchestrates it from Zagare, and she can't be at Combe, as I understand it, but comes over for a lot of the races. I saw her and we chatted at Goodwood a couple of weeks back, and without their passion and dedication for Formula Junior, which stretches back 20 plus years, it really wouldn't be where it is today. And it was kind of the Formula Ford kind of reincarnated the sort of the spirit of Formula Junior when Formula Ford arrived in 1967, but Formula Junior kind of finished at the end of 1963 when Formula 3 returned to the scene. We've had 500cc Formula 3 cars of the 50s at the Autumn Classic before. It's not their turn this year, but Formula 3, as the 500s were, Formula 3 and Formula 2 both came back as 1 litre formulae in '64. And the 1 litre Formula 3 cars, which are going through a real renaissance at the moment, be great to have them at Autumn Classic in future years. The Screamers, as they were known, they ran right the way through to 1970, and they had a 30-odd car grid at Brands Hatch in July, which is the best for those I've seen in donkey's years. And next year, of course, it's the 60th anniversary of 1 litre Formula 3, so that might be a good target to have for Castle Combe in the Autumn Classic, which promises to be a real great one next year.
Well, the irony is there's your man that's just said hi, Ian Danaher, that now is the competition secretary. That is, there you go, Ian. You've heard it straight from Marcus Pye. That's what he wants on the bill: is the 1 litre Formula 3s.
Yeah, 60th anniversary next year. So, but Formula Junior this weekend is going to be great, and you'll see, that they are fine little kind of miniature Grand Prix cars, and they're powered by, in the main, 1100cc Ford engines, but there are some BMCs and there's some Fiats as well. Not an exclusive engine formula by any stretch of the imagination, just capacities and weights. Cars only weigh 400 kilos, which is absolutely staggering. So you've got to pop the driver in the top, of course, as well. But, they're quick, and they'll be very, very spectacular to watch.
Real driver's car as well, from what I hear. So the one we missed out before lunch, and apologies if you had an order in mind that you were going to go through this, but the Superformance Ferrari Club Classic. Now, I commentated on these at Brands Hatch earlier this year, a few weeks ago for Festival Italia. Wonderfully eclectic mix of Ferraris. It's just brilliant.
I saw them at Donington. Yeah, I saw them at Donington earlier in the year, and they had a triple banger race there. Each of the races won by different drivers. The conditions varied through the weekend, and you'll see quite a lot of. I mean, we're spoilt, aren't we, at Castle Combe, because we normally see Doug Watson coming out in the GTs and winning races with his so was it a 488 challenge or a 458 challenge?
488 now, yeah,
fabulous.
Crazy. Yeah,
and really going well. And of course, we see Ray Ferguson in his earlier car, the 355. That's coming out this weekend, as I understand it. Ray's on the entry, as I saw.
You wouldn't have got good odds on that, really, would you? Because it's almost guaranteed that Ray Ferrari, not Ferguson, was going to be out. Let's be honest.
Exactly. But no, it's a super series. It's coming into its own. It's building. And we're seeing it more regularly, which, exposure at events like this will only benefit the brand.
21 cars. Sorry, that wasn't good for TV then. But 21 cars that we've got there entered as it stands. So it's going to be brilliant. There's no question about it.
And they raced twice. They raced before lunch and later in the afternoon, didn't they? Yeah,
absolutely. So that will be good. After the first Formula Juniors race, say first. Oh, there is only one. Sorry, I thought there was more than one.
Only one Formula Junior race, yeah.
The HSCC Griffith's Haig Trophy. Speak to me about that one.
Yeah, 50s sports cars. This goes back to the birth of the Historic Sports Car Club in 1966, which...
Just going to pause you a minute. You keep going because I've got to run to the toilet. I'm going to put you on full screen.
Yes, the Griffiths Haig Trophy, HSCC was formed as a result of the Griffiths Formula race at Castle Combe in May '66, won by Neil Corner in a D-Type Jaguar. And Guy Griffiths, who was a famous racing photographer, was responsible, or he saw that the cars of the 50s were leaching away from the UK. They were tending to be sold on and maybe some of them moving out of the country. He didn't want to see that happen. And so he thought, well, let's come up with a style of racing, a grid of racing to encourage owners to keep the cars in this country. And people like Neil Corner came out with a D-Type. I think there was C-Type Jaguars, Porsches, some beautiful Ferraris as well. And the Castle Combe race kind of had far-reaching consequences, really, because, this club grew out of that. The race meeting that was held at was a Fraser Nash car club meeting, and it built nicely. And of course, the HSCC has over the years branched out into many other types of racing. But this Griffith's Haig trophy, the Haig is for Betty Haig, who was a racer of repute as well, one of the sort of pioneering female racers. And she was involved actively in promoting racing as well. And the Griffith's Haig trophy celebrates those cars really of the 1950s that could have been lost to the UK. And lots of different manufacturers out there. We've got Fraser Nash's among them. We've got the beautiful, awesome Maserati 250S of Richard Wilson. And Richard Wilson and Richard Bradley won the Freddie March Memorial Trophy race at Goodwood in this car. And it was particularly apposite because the particular Maserati was raced by Carroll Shelby and Jim Hall of Chaparral fame back in the 1950s. So at an event at Goodwood, which was celebrating Shelby's career, it was fantastic that the very first race of the weekend was won by an ex-Shelby car. And both Richard Wilson and Richard Bradley, who's a modern prototype racer, drove it absolutely beautifully. And it's a car that we've seen before. We've seen it win before at Castle Combe, and it's just worthy of. It's a real droolsome machine. So there'll be a queue of people around it in the paddock, I'm sure.
Are these potentially the most expensive cars on the, of the day?
Yeah, some of them certainly are, and it's a real mixture between there's the svelte Maserati. There are some thuggish Allards with big American V8 engines in them, in both cycle winged and envelope bodied styles as well. We're going to see Cooper Bristol. I think it's going to be the Tony Crook Cooper Bristol going there, and so these Nashes go up against them, all with that straight six Bristol engine that was based on the pre-war BMW unit. And yeah, it's a super field. There's some little Elvas in there as well with Coventry Climax engines in them. And I don't have the entry list absolutely in front of me, but I know it's a good mix, and it's built up to somewhere in the high teens now, which is as good as it's been in the couple of years that the HSCC has been running this. Tony Bianchi's put a lot of effort in behind it, son of the aviator Doug Bianchi. And Tony Bianchi drives the amazing Allard Farrell design, kind of based on an Allard underpinnings by Don Farrell, who was a cycle shop owner. And the car is absolutely monstrous. He drives it on the road sometimes, which is just fab. Well, there's your entry list. It's far too far away for me to see. But yeah, it's a good one. So we've got some great little cars there. We've got little Lola Mark 1, which is always good to see. The little Lico Sport as well. And that's driven by Scott Quattlebaum, who's American. It's owned by his father, Alexander McQueen Quattlebaum, who sadly had quite a big accident in it at Silverstone earlier in the year. He's still recovering from the from getting knocked about in that accident. But fortunately, the car has recovered. And Scott's going to drive it. Stephen Bond has the Lister Bristol. Lister cars made in Cambridge, better known really for their Jaguar engine cars later, but the Lister Bristol is a good one to see. We've got the Porsche 356A Speedster of Jeff Moyes, a Mark specialist, and there were a couple of Porsches in the original race in '66, the Griffiths Formula race. The Aston Martin DB2, Peter Baker. It's a car that went particularly well at Thruxton, as I recall. Cooper Bristol with the full body. That's the 225 of Malcolm Harrison, who used to race in sort of mini Metro challenges and things years back. The Terrier, designed by Len Terry, who, of course, designed the Lotus that Jim Clark won the Indianapolis 500 in the 1960s. You've got little Cooper as well in there. And the Fraser Nash, they're both Le Mans replicas at the top, not Lemont replica. We changed that for the program. but this is an early evolution of the entry list. But it's a strong one, and a real good mix of big bangers and little nimble sports.
And they race twice.
They do. They've got a double header as they had last year, but more cars this year.
Brilliant. No, I mean, that looks really, really good. So after them is the CMMC Classic Challenge incorporating Norman Dewis Trophy for Jaguar cars and Ecurie Racing Classic Challenge. So that's made that a pretty big grid by combining all of those guys together.
It does, and that's part of this ethos now to fill grids. Which is something that's happened in the States always, because the States have such a massive landmass that competitors of the Sports Car Club of America tend to race in their regions and then broaden out to go to a national finals at the end of the year. But combining grids has to be done because it's the only way you can amortize the costs of the circuit, etc. And what is great in this field, the number of saloon Jaguars in there as well. A good mix, Alfa Romeos, Mini Triumph, GT6 in there, but the Jaguar grid has really grown well. And this is not only for the Norman Dewis Trophy, named after the fabled Jaguar test driver, but it also is part of the Mike Hawthorne series. We mentioned Mike Hawthorne earlier in the show. Went on to be the 1958 Formula One world champion, Britain's first for Ferrari back in the day. And this field of Jags, powered by the 3.4 and 3.8 litre XK engines, an engine that went back to 1948, its roots, 2 years before Castle Combe, is quite something. And when you see Grant Williams in the field, Tom Smith is very quick. The Nigel Webb Rob Newell car is a really quick car. Nigel, a massive Jaguar enthusiast, and Rob Newell, XK champion in the past. John Young is a driver with decades of experience Roxwell racing. Mark Gordon, who comes with his XK 150S. Kevin Zwolinski, another good racer. And the omnipresent Jeff Otley's in there as well. Roland State with the S-Type. And the big Mark 7, massive car, driven by Tom Harris and Rob Johnson. But Graham Pettit, Grant Williams, it's a great pack within this grid. And Ecurie Classic Racing has some extras as well. MGB, the Gilburn, the Welsh car of Mike Lamplow. And that's a lovely little car to see. It's got an MG, it's got a BMC B Series engine. It's effectively the same as an MGB. You've got local Bristolian mini racer Paul Ogborn there with his Cooper S, Louis Frankel with the Alpha, Chris Edmonds the Cooper S, and the TVR as well of Martin Stowe. So it really is a nice mix, but the Jaguars form the nucleus of that grid.
And that's going to be, I mean, that takes me back to when I first started watching at Castle Combe 40 years ago now.
Well, you'd have probably seen the Grant Williams Jag when it was red. It's one of the Risker Garages team from South Wales.
But just me and my dad, we would just be sat up at Quarry Corner, and you'd watch them, and you'd go, "Why are they even out on circuits? Because they're big, aren't they? They're massive." Yeah. But they went amazing.
They slide well, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the joy of it. And when you look at these a lot of these modern cars and the cars that have been tweaked around for quasi historic racing, and they sit there, and they corner absolutely flat as a kipper. And you think to yourself, that's not exactly how they were in the period. But these Jags, they slide and they lean and they lurch and they fry their tires, and it's everything that you could want from touring car racing.
Agreed. So that brings us to one more that we've got, and that's Fiscar. Explain to people what Fiscar is.
Fiscar is, well, it's a bit like NASCAR. It's a kind of an acronym. And Fiscar stands for 50 sports cars. And again, it's a super series. It's one that's been supporting the Castle Combe Autumn Classic since the very beginning, back in 2012. And again, it's a lovely mix. They call it Fiscar Intermarque. You've got in here everything from a couple of little Lotus Elites, again with that 1216cc Coventry Climax engine, the single overhead cam engine, and they are just gorgeous to look at, the Elite Coupe. We've got XK150 at Mark Gordon back again with XK150S. Healy 100M is a very, very wieldy car, and the Tollets drive that well, Glenn and Rory Tollett. The AC Aces will take some beating. Andy and Murray Shepherd, a very, very quick father and son duo, and Justin Beckett as well. Those AC Aces have the Bristol straight six engine, and they didn't all have those. Back in the day, they came with the pre-war AC engine, 2-litre AC engine, and also the 2.5-litre Ford engine out of Zephyrs and Zodiacs. Elva Courier is a quick car with an MGA type engine in it. Aston Martin again, that's David Reed's car, Maureen as she's known, the Dubonnet coloured car. It's campaigned all over Britain and sometimes in Europe. The Morgans of Mark Hobel there, and Alan House, sharing with Richard Thorne, who's a Morgan specialist. The RGS Atalanta is an interesting car, a Peter Blanchett. That's got an MG type engine, or the engine that goes in an MGA, effectively 1622. And that's RGS is an acronym for its builder, Richard Gaylard Shattuck, and it has the Atlanta suspension system in it. There was an RGS, it's Atalanta rather than Atlanta, RGS Atalanta Jaguar as well, raced all over back in the 1950s. We've got Simon Jeffries, another of the Astons, the Elva Mark V, this time with Valerio Leone driving it. And Valerio is a quick, historic Formula 3 racer. And he's out in the Elva, which is nice. The Lico's back with Scott Quattlebaum. And Andrew Cox with the Triumph TR3 with the Falcon body. It looks like no TR3 you've ever seen. It's really pretty. And the 2138cc engine is a Triumph, as goes in some of the Morgans. The Dick Jacobs Special is an MG with a full coupe body on it, and the hands of Stuart Dean. Richard Thorne's Morgan is there. The Alpha as well, and a pair of contrasting Sunbeams. The Alpine Le Mans and the Sunbeam Alpine Harrington Coachworks Fastback Coupe on that one. And then you've got the Jarrett Jupiter car made in Bradford in Yorkshire, 1500cc flat 4 engine. Harry Nerger's car, which has been well known. The Jarrett Jupiters and the Javelin Saloons versions are actually pretty good little racers. Morgan 4 plus 4s there with different sizes of Triumph engine. Sean Bromley's MGA. Cooper again with the Bristol engine. Janettas. Little G4 with a 1-litre Ford engine in that one. Mark Morgan's car. Richard Tyzak and Nick Taylor. Nick Taylor, a Ferrari racer, also classic Formula 3 racer. He's got the ex-Elio De Angelis Monaco winning Chevron P38. But they share Richard's amazing Kellerson, which has a 5.5-litre Chevrolet engine. Wow. It doesn't have great brakes. It doesn't turn corners very well, but it's rather swift in a straight line. And so that's good to see that in among the invitees. Jeff Turrell and Robert Worthington with the Triumph. And then there's another invitation car, Andrew Davenall with the big Austin Westminster, the A1056, which effectively marries the same engine as went in the Healy 3000s with a saloon car, Shell. So it's an interesting mix. And it's another one that's got a better grid this year than of late. So very, very pleasing to see.
It really is. I mean, such an eclectic mix. I just had to laugh. Roy Salisbury is obviously watching, and he said he hopes I'm taking notes because there's going to be questions later. Like, it never ceases to amaze me. Your knowledge on these cars, this history, the drivers, and everything is just mind-blowing. It always harks me back as well, Marcus. I know I've thanked you in the past. Is that the first person I sat in the commentary box with was you and your knowledge, and I was shadowing you at Castle Combe, and I suddenly went, I can't do this. I don't know a fraction of what you know. And you turned to me and said, no, that's my style. You will find your own style. You don't need to know all of this stuff. And I've always been eternally grateful that.
So all your success is my fault.
100%. Absolutely. You could have taken me out of the game in an instant there, because I was overwhelmed by the knowledge that you have. But that is your unique, isn't it? And it's just, it goes to show the passion you have. I mean, Craig's still there in the background. He'll be related to this, I'm sure, that this knowledge that you have, but you have a thirst for other people to be able to learn this, to absorb this, to be part of it.
Yeah, I've been going since I was a kid, and I was taken to an event at age 2 months at Silverstone in '58, and kind of, well, I didn't go a lot over the years, over the first 10 years or so, because, you know, parents were moving out of London and sort of getting established, and sort of family was growing, etc. I never lost the interest in it, and I was always devouring the magazines and going out of my way to walk 3 miles to school when I could have walked a mile. But on a Thursday, you could get an Autosport and a Motoring News, as it was then, and then read it under the desk in the French lesson and get roasted for it at the end. But you know, I think if my French master was around these days, and I very much doubt that he is, he'd be about 110 if he was. Yeah. He would have probably said he was wrong when he said which is going to be more use to you when you leave school, Autosport or French. And I sort of said at the time, well, I sincerely hoped Autosport. I hadn't learned much in the way of French, and while I wish I'd learned a bit of French now, I suppose 46 years later, there's an element of the proof of the pudding's in the eating.
And I love the fact that I've just seen Craig nodding his head and giggling away with you as well. He relates to everything you're saying there very clearly, and it is great. I mean, you've got comments like Tom Davis, Marcus buys a Walkland Encyclopedia. Jamie Peter Ennis says, I worked with Marcus at the Thruxton Historic meeting, and in those 2 days I learned so much. It was an absolute joy. And Tim Perry confirms, yeah, say that again. That's why I could sit and listen to him all evening. And you know, I just want to make sure that you heard those things as well, Marcus.
Well, I mean, you're too kind, ladies and gentlemen, you know, all the comments, etc. But I mean, I love what I do. I've been very, very fortunate to have been immersed in this game for a long, long time. Sort of really since historic racing really grew up. And over the years, having probably commentated for the first time about 40 years ago, something like that, and built to about 40 to 50 days most years. It's not quite that many now, but I thoroughly enjoy it. But it's being able to read a race and actually to impart that knowledge, if you can, to try to entertain, try to bring a little bit of light-hearted education to the whole thing. Not everyone's going to listen. Not everyone's going to get sort of really excited about the, you know, what colour splinge pin they're using on the Ford Anglia this weekend. It's not that important, but if you pitch it nicely and you sort of read the race and sort of use your knowledge, and the fact that I can also relate to the fact that I've driven a large number of race cars, probably sort of you know, more than a lot of people have. I'm very privileged to have done that, but that also helps when it comes to writing about it, to talking about it, and I'm just blessed to have done what I've done for a long time. And, you know, I've got my late father and my late godfather really to thank for kind of imbuing me with that kind of spirit from right back to the 50s.
Yeah, and I just thought it's worth you seeing, because we just get on and do our job, don't we? We blindly and hoping that it's sticking, and so it's nice for that to see. And I'm going to pull a pin. You don't need to comment on this necessarily. Peter Flanagan says Marcus is much missed at Goodwood, and that's not the first person I've heard that.
Well,
say that,
there you go.
Yeah,
not
yes, moving on quickly so you don't get yourself in trouble. The other thing as well, of course, Marcus, is that we've been waxing lyrical about the cars that are there, but there's some driver stars that are going to be there as well. Did they speak to you? Are you interviewing them on this stage that they've got?
Well, if there's time, I mean, I could be sort of juggling and sort of, you know, fortunately we've got John Moon running around in the paddock, and it may well be that at some time also that Clive Woodward can get involved as well.
Yeah, because I think it was on this stage that they've created, possibly do it in the morning, because this is where they suddenly went, "Oh, Chris, you're not there," and I'm like, "Nope," and they were like,
well, it depends, I suppose. If there's a zip wire from the commentary box to the stage,
well, if they get you doing it, I apologise, because it was my suggestion that said if you do it in the morning, because of course we don't commentate on qualifying, do it? I said, but Marcus does like to wander around and catch up with everyone. But if you get dragged into it in the morning, I apologise in advance, Marcus.
I mean, there's some wonderful people due to be coming along. I mean, obviously my old mate Fluxy, it's great to have him there, and people like Nick Adams with that World Championship Sports Car C2 champion accolade is fantastic. David Franklin is an absolute hero, British sprint and hill climb champion, raced Can-Am cars, priceless Ferraris. I remember seeing him turn up at an MGBC V8 race at Castle Combe. It was a wet race, and he drove his wife Deb's road-going MGB-GT V8 and just blew him into the weeds. I think it was 8000 DF was the number plate on the car. But they've rallied together. He's raced for decades, and he's one of those absolutely ageless guys who just drives with all the flair and all the ability of somebody in his 20s who, given a different time scale of his life, could have been someone who was really well known on the contemporary international stage. But he had a business to run, Huntsman Garage in Bristol, and absolute star, and he remains so to this day. So great to see him there. Who else is going?
David Brodie.
Dave Brodie. I mean, Run Baby Run. I remember seeing David back in the day, back in the 70s, competing, and even in later years, he's been out in things like the Burkitt 6-hour relay with the 750 Motor Club at Silverstone. That comes up towards the end of October this year. But David, who is one of those extraordinary characters who's got a tale about everything. He knew everybody. He was an accomplice of Frank Williams in the early days, and director of
a founder and director of Williams Grand Prix Engineering.
Big buddy of Ronnie Peterson, who was my racing hero. So yeah, it's great to see these star names coming out.
David DaCosta is going to be there.
Yeah, the rock maker from Torquay, who raced in, I remember him in Ford Escort Mexicos and things like that. Yeah. And absolute star in his day. I think he was an instructor at racing school for many moons. I haven't seen David for probably about 3 decades.
Yeah, I've seen him, and his health's taken a hit, but it's lovely to know that he's going to be there. He may well be in a wheelchair, but he will be there. Roger Orgie's another one as well, and some of you more recent spectators of the circuit will think you know that, but that's Roger Orgie Jr. that we all know that is a double Castle Combe Formula 4 champion, but it was all started in that family by Roger Orgie Sr.
Yeah, he won the championship in the early 70s, 74 I think it was.
Correct,
like
exactly right.
With a dual on MP15.
Yeah, and he won the Castle Combe leg of the 1979 County Challenge in Nigel Mansell's BMW 323i.
And Nigel Mansell won nothing in Roger Orgie's Formula Ford.
No, exactly. So he's better than him. That's what
I mean. Probably. Yeah, absolutely.
As well as the drivers, we got vintage buses are going to be there. We've got Trade Village. We got club car displays. And just to give you an idea of the clubs that are attending, we got the AC4 Almesbury Classic and Cherish Car Club, Austin Healey Club, BMW Car Club, GB South Wales region, Bristol Hot Rods, Bristol Owners Heritage Trust, Caterham and Lotus 7 Club, Classic and Historic Motor Club, Clifton Club Petrolheads, Club Lotus, Club Marcus International, Gilburn Owners Club Limited, GWR Exit or whatever. Apologies if I got that wrong. Historic Lotus Register, Jaguar Enthusiast Club, Curbside Motors, Lancia Motor Club, MG Car Club Southwest Centre, Morgan Sports Car Club, North Devon Sports and Classic Car Club, Porsche Club GB, Queen's Square Car Club, and still more, and bear with me, Reliance Scimitar and Sabre Owners Club, the Alfa Romeo Owners Club, the Imp Club, the Midget and Sprite Club, the TTs, Bristol, Southwest and Southwest Regions TIPEC, TR Register, Usk Valley Classic Car Club, West Parks Classic Vehicle Club, West Country Minis, White Horse Classic Vehicle Enthusiast Club. I mean, that is mind-blowing, isn't it?
It is. Do you know something? I thought you rattled that all off the top of your head, and then I saw you lift the piece of paper up into this. Oh, there you go.
Wouldn't even pretend that one.
Yeah. But I think what is wonderful is, of course, that this event really focuses on Lotus and its 75th anniversary, and we're going to see, I think, an extraordinary selection of Lotuses over the weekend, not only on track, but also in the paddocks and the car parks.
Exactly.
And,
so much. And actually, Kat's just confirmed the Ferrari Owners Club are going to be located at the entrance of Chippenham Road as well.
Right.
Understandably, because we've obviously got the
fantastic stuff. And I'm expecting a very good turnout of spectators. I think advanced tickets have gone well. And we've tried hard to put together a nice little program for you as well, souvenir program.
It's brilliant. It is brilliant, Marcus. I have to say, I've seen the electronic version of it today. It is outstanding. So everybody, make sure you get those programs, because what
is really nice. I had to, I wrote a feature on Lotus, and with great help of Pete Stowe, Castle Combe's historian, tracing some of the notable exploits down the years of Lotus, and I was able to get through our old friend Ted Walker a couple of fantastic period pictures, one of which is a grid from the middle part of the 60s. And he couldn't tell me top of his head which year it was, but we could see on that grid Lotus 23s, Lotus 15, Lotus 11, Lotus 7s, and the influence of Lotus as a mark on club racing. Utterly profound, probably greater than any other. But, you know, at Goodwood, Castle Combe, anywhere you care to name, if you were an amateur racer turning up with a Lotus, you were probably going to be somewhere near the sharp end of the grid. And thus it's proved. I think 180 something races at Castle Combe won by Lotus drivers, including Lotus Cortina drivers, such as the great Vince Woodman, who we celebrated last year, have won. So that is many, many more than probably most of the other marks put together.
Hence is perfect. We're celebrating the 70 years. Couple of messages.
25 years.
Just an FYA from Peggy Swackman to help Marcus info on the day. The Mark Williams in the Formula Juniors is not the same Mark Williams racing the Cobra, but the Mark Williams in the Formula Juniors is the one that also races the Castle Combe Hot Hatch Series.
Absolutely brilliant. Top tip, top trumps. Both from Bristol, I noticed in the programme, which is great.
Okay. So, that means that was important to be told then, wouldn't it? Because we would make that mistake, wouldn't we?
I won't fall into that trap then.
Oh, exactly.
The joys of live commentary.
Exactly. My mate Forsey, Richard Fors, says, "Hey Chris and Marcus, sorry you won't be there, Chris, but look forward to seeing you. Marcus on Saturday has managed to get a last-minute drive with David Alexander in his Alpha."
Can't be
Forsey
bad.
will always find a race in something, won't he? Goodness me. And Lynn Hoy, one of the Mighty Orange Army, got quite excited when we were talking about all the car clubs that were there as well. Ian Danaher, our competition secretary, has basically said Fluxy and put his hands over his eyes. I know, but the guy is a legend and he's great fun. If you haven't got any advance tickets, don't panic. I know it's got this weird thing on the website where it says fully booked, I think is the phrase it uses, which is really weird and frustrating. But that means that the advance tickets have closed. That's what it should say. The advance tickets have closed because it has to stop at a certain point. But admissions are available on the day at the gate, and it's £20 for adults. Concessions, I know they're back. 65 plus, £15. Children
I qualify.
Do you? Well, there you go. 15 quid. There, do your deal. 16 and unders are permitted free of charge, but must be accompanied by an adult at all times to be able to get in as well, and all of that sort of stuff. So get yourself down there. If you've never been and you're on the fence, I cannot encourage you enough. It is such a special event. And listen, if you fancy it, get yourself into some kind of old gear. Doesn't have to always be, you know, expensive stuff like military gear from yesteryears or racing gear from yesteryears. Just something that resembles old-fashioned clothing.
Rootle through your parents' attic. That's the way to do
And
it.
anybody who does want to go and get something, one of the best things I suggest to you, go and have a look in some charity shops. Brilliant place to go.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff that you can get in there. Or if you really fancy splashing out, I did it a few years ago, is go to a dressing up shop and hire something for the day. But you will not feel left out. The more of you can do it, the better. And I think we really want to push this for the Autumn Classic more and more. It is brilliant. It is so much fun. I remember Tom Davis, who was watching earlier, that was dressed up as oh god, what's the program from the olden days? I got a mental block now what the program was, but he was absolutely brilliant in that. And whereas I just went do you remember I scared the hell out of you in that global hypercolor stuff that I had on with the blonde long hair?
Whatever trips your trigger, Chris.
It really didn't, but it freaked enough people out, so it was all good. It was all good.
It reminded me a little bit too much of my father and his kind of party attire, to be honest. Uncomfortably realistic.
Peaky Blinders, that's what I was trying to think of that Tom Davis was in, by the way. Peaky Blinders. But yeah, mine was more Scooby-Doo, wasn't it, to be honest with you? But yeah.
If you say so.
It was. Marcus Pike, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Apologies, I've made your dinner late. Please pass on my apologies to your good lady.
There's a microwave in the cupboard. It'll be fine.
Yeah, and as long as there's not a dog, you're fine. That's not a problem. But I do apologise. Thank you so much for joining me. Craig, I know you in the background. Thank you for joining us as well, my friend. He's put his thumbs up. Go and catch them out. Paddock Life. Go and find out. You can go in the shop. That there's going to be a section where they're all the magazines are available. You'll see them on display as well. Have a chat with them. Find out what it is that they do. It sounds like we're going to be working in partnership with them with Castle Combe Circuit. Marcus, it's a stupid comment to make, but enjoy yourself on Saturday.
Hey, great stuff. Look forward to chatting to you all then. And good night. Thanks for having me.
Thanks all. Catch you all soon. All the best.